Let's talk about clamp storage. Just like a huge chunk of the tools in my workshop, I want a clamp rack that makes it really easy to grab a clamp and go right back to work. I don't want to fuss with moving other clamps out of the way to get what I need. So that's how I'm going to build this storage rack. First, I laid out all the clamps that I have and took some measurements. I made a plan based on what I currently have and what I most likely will acquire in the future. I'll have a section for really long clamps, medium-sized clamps, short clamps, and spring clamps. That pretty much covers 99% of what exists, so let's start building. I got a partial sheet of wood left over from the plywood walls. This is 1/2 inch Russian birch plywood. One dimension was already 4 feet, so I left that. I made a mark at 30 inches wide and cut it with a circular saw. To hold the majority of the clamps, I'm going to build shelves with a small lip to keep the clamps from sliding off. I measured the clamps to see how deep to make the shelf, then ripped a few strips of 1/2 inch ply. I also ripped a few strips 3/4 inches wide to be used as the lip. I cut them down to the right length, 12 inches for the medium-sized clamps and 15 inches for the long bar clamps. Then I attached the lip to the shelf with glue and a few brad nails. The lip sticks up 1/4 inch, just a small amount to keep the clamps on the rack. When those were ready, I attached them to the main board. The large clamps will take up the left side, and everything else will go on the right side. I glued the shelves to the board and added a block at either end to give it more support. I only glued the shelves to the board. No nails or screws were added. The second shelf for the medium clamps had to be a minimum distance below the first, so the clamps wouldn't be in each other's way. This shelf is for the small clamps. It doesn't have a lip because they'll stay on with little to no clamping pressure on the top and bottom of the shelf. Next is time for all the spring clamps. I laid out all the different kinds I have. Some get used way more often than others, but I'd still like to be able to easily grab any of them. So each kind will get its own hook. I marked the locations of where the hooks needed to be for each clamp, then drilled out holes for each one. For the hooks, I'm using long bolts to hold these guys. The mini spring clamps got the smallest, longest I could find, which ended up being 1032 machine screws. The rest of the top row is 6-inch long 1/4 inch bolts, and the bottom row is 6-inch long 3/8 inch bolts. I added a washer on both sides. One last thing to add is a small holder for these large screw clamps that I have. I don't anticipate using these very often, but it'll be good to have them readily available just like all the others. I added a French cleat to the back so I can mount it just like the tool wall it'll go next to. If I ever want to move the clamps somewhere else, the French cleat makes it really easy to do. I mounted the cleat on the wall, making sure it was level, and the only thing left to do was add all the clamps. And just like that, I now have all my clamps readily available on the wall. I don't think I have that many clamps at the moment. Though I've managed to get by with these guys so far, I made sure to leave some room in the rack for some more. Okay, that's it for now. See ya. Can I help you? Hello. Do you want a spot on the clamp rack? Here you go. You see that? You see that, Jim? Okay. Okay. Hi.